For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again at Dunkin' Donuts. And we have our good friend with us this week, Romeo. Hey, Romeo, how you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy.
Well,
I'm glad we're here,
buddy.
hanging out.
Hey, he gets all smarmy when you get him a crawler.
Buddy.
So, Romeo, what do you want me to get you from the counter here? What's your favorite donut? What do you like?
Oh God, the choices! Look at the plethora. The crawler. The crawler.
Chocolate or plain?
That's the famous. That's
Crawlers are a favorite. Yeah, I think it's because it's the only one people can remember the name of. I'll be honest.
And it's the one that has the most trans fat, which is good for your heart.
Right. Hey.
Here.
If you're gonna go big. That's what I say.
That's right.
I want a crawler wrapped in bacon. That's what I want.
Oh God.
A bacon crawler.
Okay, Elvis.
With banana and peanut butter. Well, so thank you again, Romeo, for joining us and taking some time out of your busy pre-Adepticon Battlefoam schedule here to join us and talk about this week's topic. And Craig, what is this week's topic on the Lost Chapters here?
Well, this week's topic, and thanks to listener Mike for this idea, is we talk a lot about these games that we get excited about, and then they never show up again. Mm-hmm. So he suggested that we look into why we think games hit or miss. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to do. Russ has a deep, in-depth theory and all these. He's done a lot of thinking about this, and then Romeo and I are just going to throw ideas at it and see what sticks.
Right.
I like it.
Okay. All right. So I figured I got a list of games. Actually, Mike suggested a few that he wanted to hear our thoughts on. Like, why did Arcane Legions, for example, fail, yet something like Malifaux from Weird Miniatures succeed, right? So why does that game have staying power, and Arcane Legions recently actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago just announced on Facebook they're done. They
really?
Yes, they are officially no longer supported. So let's look at Arcane Legions. Like Craig and I were huge into it. We bought right in when it came out of Gen Con. Really liked the mechanics. Romeo, did you have any exposure to Arcane Legions?
So is it kind of testament to why it failed? Because I've never heard of it.
That could be. And that's...
Wait, as I access my phone with Google, I will get back to you on this question.
So perhaps
because I probably have seen it. Hold on.
So these are the pre-painted miniatures, or some of them are pre-painted, and they went into little. They had unit trays that had pegs in them, and they all pegged into the unit trays, and the unit trays had overlays on them that had stats on the units. And as models died, the abilities of your unit would decrease because they would be unable to fill in certain spots on their unit formation to do different abilities.
Oh, heavens.
And what's kind of cool about it, though, was depending on where you put the models in the unit tray, it sort of changed the formation of the unit and then therefore changed their abilities. So if you had your guys all forward, they might be in fast but less damage-dealing formation. If you had them all back, they might be in slower but more more armor. And so you could configure units differently. It was kind of cool, and you could spend actions to kind of rearrange it. It was a very simple rule set, but pretty good depth on it.
I loved the Roman guys and the fact that your Testudo could really go into like a full tortoise formation and have really good defense, and it had all kinds of really cool elements.
It was cool, but I think the biggest hit against it was blind purchase, right? So
yes,
it was a semi-blind purchase weirdness
factions
thing.
They tried to mitigate that a little bit, and they were like, "But no, look, you just buy a package of the cavalry and you get all the cool cavalry. Oh, you buy a package of the infantry, you get all the cool infantry. But if you really wanted the really cool units that were going to be the hard hitters and the really cool looking, and they came painted, those were all blind purchase." Of which I have 5 cartons of in my garage right now, if anybody's interested in getting them cheap. And 2 entire armies fully painted.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
the biggest.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, and I'm a looking, and I'm a not a liking.
See now, good. Now, Romeo, why do you not like it? What are you looking at going ooh?
Okay, pre-painted, I can see is going to be an issue. I'm not a pre-painted kind of.
So you're a miniature
guy.
gamer. So here, for listeners at home, here Romeo is pretty much a diehard miniature war gamer, right? So I think one of the problems with this game was it didn't know what it wanted to be, because you've got a miniature war gamer looking at it going, really pre-painted, and what's up with those giant square black bases, right? Is that kind of freaking you out a little bit? And yet, but then they're not fully pre-painted. So the non-miniature war gamers look at it going, wait, I got to do some painting?
Yeah.
So I think part of the problem here is, right, it was on the fence. Miniature war gamers, and the models look nice, but they're not like the level of a GW or a Privateer Press or a Spartan, right? They're not that level, so they're kind of like in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been it too. So it wasn't one of those. It had the problem of another one we're going to talk about later in this list, of not really knowing what it wanted to be. I think it was sort of in the middle, and maybe that was its niche, but it was too small of a niche, maybe. I don't know.
I think that there's a huge, I'm going to call it the gimmick factor, because I think that hits a lot of these also. And that's the whole, like, we've got a really cool idea, but it's not an elegant mechanic, it's a gimmick. And it's something new to wrap your head around. And for instance, I would say if Malifaux had failed, everybody would be calling the card thing a gimmick, and nobody would, instead, Malifaux's this big hit, everybody's like, oh, it's so cool. So obviously they wrapped it, or they presented it in a way that it's not a gimmick, it's a really cool element. I mean, and it really is. If you look at the fiction, if you look at the artwork in the books, the card element is carried through the entire game, which is great. Whereas I think with Arcane Legions, you've got the aesthetic value of the tray with all the different holes in it when you're not using all the holes. It makes it look like more of a board game, because mini games you spend hours and hours and hours trying to make your movement trays look cool and your units look cool, and now they're on multicolored plastic with holes in them, and so I think it doesn't mesh smoothly with the rest of the game. It sort of sticks out as a barrier to immersing yourself in the game, rather than a cool element that brings you deeper in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
which makes it more of a gimmick and less of like a really cool element that gets added.
So
yeah, it hurts my eyes.
So what interesting, Craig, you compared Arcane Legions to Malifaux. Yeah. And interesting about that is both those games launched at the same Gen Con, actually.
They did, yes.
And as you say, Malifaux is a success. And let's take a look at the two differences here. So why do we think Malifaux, I mean, Romeo, you play Malifaux. I remember you asked this demo to you for TempleCon once. So you've already looked at Arcane Legions, you glanced at it for 30 seconds, you're like, yuck, no thanks. Yeah. Now, as a miniature wargamer, then you look at Malifaux. What do you feel when you first saw Malifaux? Why did you even have an interest in learning about it?
Well, I mean, I'm into the cowboy thing anyway. Now you throw steampunk in there, and then you throw some Victorian stuff in there, and you got me hooked. Anyway, I'm interested just because you're mixing genres that almost want to be mixed, so that's going to draw me in. You throw in a gimmick like the card mechanic, and now, it's gimmick, but I'm a poker player too, so I play a lot of poker. So I like that. Now you're talking. Now you've brought me into something I already have done for years. And now you're throwing into something cool that I look at, and now I'm curious. So my curiosity is going to lead into interest. Interest is going to lead into investment. Investment is going to lead into me having 120 freaking Malifaux figures painted right now, which is retarded.
Well,
so
that's a good point. And I think the other thing about Malifaux is it knows what it is. I mean, Weird Miniatures comes from miniature sculptors, and there's no. Some of those models are very advanced, very small parts. I would say require advanced modeling and painting skills to even get them looking decent. In many cases, it's not really an intro modeling game, in my opinion. I mean, you could certainly use it as your first miniature game, but it's not the easiest place to start, I don't think, compared to playing like a Space Marine, for example, right? So, but I think they know where they are, and they said, we come from modeling background. We know models. We've got all these crazy eclectic styles. We're going to mash them all together and then come with some really cool rules. And I think Arcane Legions maybe trying again to straddle that fence may have been more helpful than good, whereas Weird says, we know that there's no board gamer out there, a casual gamer is going to look at this. We don't care. This is all about the hardcore modeler who might really want an interesting hardcore rule set, right?
Right.
So, Craig, any thoughts on why Weird was more successful besides those?
Well, I think if you look at it, again, kind of like you said, Arcane Legions didn't know what it was really marketing itself to, I don't think. And it had that kind of cartoony look to it, and it had that board gamey feel to it, and the rule book was a little flimsy book that you got in the, I mean, it wasn't, there was no big, huge push. There was a little bit of fluff there, and it was kind of neat, but it was very, everything was very thin. Whereas if you look at Malifaux, You've got these beautiful rule books with, I mean, the fiction goes through them in a really, really cool story arc in each rule book. I mean, they really took in my opinion, what they did was they looked at Privateer Press and they said, their model is really good. What do people not like about their model? And we're going to try to fix it. Not change it so that it appeals to people that aren't necessarily falling in with the Privateer Press element. So their stories, the way their rule books are arranged, very similar to the Privateer Press rule books. So you've got fluff throughout that not only informs and elevates the whole game, but a story that from beginning of the rule book to the end of the rule book has an arc to it that actually moves the whole universe of the story forward. Introduces all of the factions, a whole bunch of models for every faction, so you've got a whole bunch of stuff right off the bat instead of one codex at a time or whatever. And there's a constant push to get those models out, so there's a lot of support for the game, whereas Arcane Legions was kind of like, here's everything we've got, and some of it looks cartoony, and that's it. And if you're really good and we're really successful, we're going to start having these limited edition models every month. And you knew you were in trouble when they had the first 2 limited edition models, and then that's it. There was no more support after that second limited edition model. Right. And the limited edition models went from 3 different kinds of dragons to 1 dragon that had 3 different cards with it. And I mean, there was you could actually see it start to stagger and fall at the beginning. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there was, whether it was just the energy and the spirit that the people were bringing to Malifaux, or if they had all their ducks in a row, in a more regimented fashion, so they were able to bang, 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 and give you art and give you fluff and give you the rules and give you the models, and then just keep with the new models, and then 1 year later, bang, they managed to maintain the excitement, and then 1 year later, bam, a whole new rule book. And it wasn't like a new version of the rules. It was, these are all cool new rules that go with the old rules that add all kinds of new stuff, and everybody gets new models, and bam, here's the new models. And so, I mean, there's a certain juggernaut energy aspect to Weird Miniatures and Malifaux that I think you really need in order to. I mean, you've got I think your fan base really senses that, and I think that really gives you a leg up over other people. I mean, if you remember, the Arcane Legions had its own forum and it had all this cool stuff, and we were all really excited. And that was another example of how things were right at the beginning falling apart, because it was like, you're going to have to pay a couple dollars a month or whatever to maintain this because it's that cool. Yeah. Oh, we're going to pretend we didn't say that, and we're going to give you a test run for free. Right. Oh, we're actually going to make it free always because we really like you guys and we think this is cool. Please come back to our forum and start posting. I mean, and they weren't presenting you with anything. It was all right. It's like one of the most important things I learned working for Games Workshop and doing the whole regional director internship thing that I did was that a game company cannot say, here's our game, community, make it cool and do your own stuff with it. You have to constantly be providing support and excitement. You have to be injecting that into the community, or the community will eventually go someplace else. Yeah, I think Weird does that very well.
So there's a good example of, and I think one of the things Weird had that was really strong also going into this was they already had an existing fan base of their models, right? And across the board, everybody knew their models are beautiful. So it was really just, you're coming out with the rule set for your models, that's awesome. So they had the advantage of really, really beautiful models. Now let's look at another example from the same Gen Con. I think this is all Gen Con 2010, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So also at Gen Con 2010, in addition to Arcane Legions and Malifaux premiering, you also had Excellus. Now, Excellus is an interesting case study because Excellus was also fantastically beautiful plastic models.
Amazingly beautiful.
I mean, some of the best stuff you've ever seen, even now, okay? And yet, the idea behind this game was you put all your beautiful plastic models on this pretty okay-looking plastic board with sort of grids, large grid squares on it.
Your table is gridded.
And then you have a application either on your iPhone or on your nearby PC or laptop that does the battles for you, right?
Yeah.
And here's where it started getting weird. We had some of our friends really get into this idea and bought right in. And some of us were like, well, I don't know. And what do you think, Romeo? Are you familiar with Excellus at all? Did you follow the arc of this thing?
I definitely did, because they were actually, I can't remember if they were before or after Gen Con at Gamma. I think they were before they went to Gen Con, they revealed at Gamma, and then they went to Gen Con, because they kind of followed our path too, because we had just come out a year before them. So we kind of watched them come through, and we were license hunting at the time, so we looked at them, and I went over to their booth, and I remember taking a peek at their stuff and just kind of getting an idea, listening to the guy do a spiel. And as soon as he started going off about his spiel, and you saw the little horses running across the screen, and then the little horses hit the other little horses, and then the guy's like, all right, now do this. I was like, this is going to blow up. I thought it was going to blow up at Gamma. I didn't think it was going to make it to Gen Con.
Yeah, they sputtered. They must have had some serious funding, because they sputtered along for like almost 2 years. Yeah.
I mean, somebody believed in the project majorly, and again, not to get people mad at me, but the fact, because people are going to be like, you're a bastard, that poor people, they work for their families. Look, I know a lot goes into creating games, and God bless those people that tried really hard. I think what they did is they complicated a simple mechanic, and that is the mechanic of the tabletop wargamer. The tabletop wargamer wants to have a bag of trinkets, a bag of dice, a tape measure, and his models. And when you remove some of the trinkets, you take the nostalgia out of the game. We enjoy, I do at least, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but I enjoy having tokens. I enjoy having dice. I enjoy having templates. I enjoy getting dice that match my army. I enjoy having 1,700 dice for every army.
You may not believe this, Romeo, but some people even enjoy getting super cool bags to put their models in and having logos and stuff printed on that. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but it's pretty amazing.
I know a guy. Call me.
Okay.
So, the thing about it is, when they took that out and they said, "Watch our little reanimated, silly little cartoon do it for you."
And the thing is, it didn't even match the little. Not to interrupt you, but the little silly cartoon didn't even match the look and style of the models on the table. Like, they're all hyper realistic, cool looking, and the thing is, like little Japanese animes, almost like chibi stuff dancing around.
Yeah.
Like, what the?
And so repetitive,
right?
So repetitive, and I'm just like, wow, I rolled a 7. There's no chance in hell I would have rolled a 7, because I know my luck's way better than that computer's idiotic, algorithm. So as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this is like an explosion that has happened, and you're just sitting 2 miles away looking at the plume in the air and the mushroom cloud and waiting for your face to get melted off. It's going to happen. When is it going to get to you, kind of thing?
Yeah, I feel bad because the guys that worked on it, I chatted with them several times. We interviewed them, and they seem like really nice folks. But
yeah, they're Canadians. Good guys, right? They're
right. Canadians are good people.
Yeah.
We know that. We learned nothing from the Olympics beyond that. But it's unfortunate. But I think the idea. Now, let me ask you this, Romeo, because you just talked about trinkets. Are you familiar with what Privateer Press is doing with the new War Room iPhone Android app coming out? Soon?
I was at TempleCon. You guys,
right.
You guys go? I can't remember.
Yeah, we were there. Yeah, we chatted with you for a brief period of time.
Hey, man, I go to a convention every 2 weeks.
No, I get it, dude. I totally get
where
it.
they're at.
I get it.
That's okay. That's okay.
But I was in that obviously reveal, unveiling, and I thought it's cool. I mean, I like the idea of having your stuff in your phone. I think they better be careful when they do that and they automate their game, because lost revenue, first of all, right? And second of all, it's something that I think could take away from the visual aspect of the game. Somebody walks into a game store and sees all the cards out. You have the card holders, and you have your dry erase marker, and you got your little bag of trinkets here, and this there, and da 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 da. And you're like, man, that's just one thing going on there. It's like a little jewelry set, right?
Right.
And that attracts you. There's colors and there's things. I mean, human beings are attracted to colors and items, right? So you see this sprawled out on the table. It's like a treasure trove. It's like everybody's throwing this stuff on the table to look at. Whereas if all of a sudden that's all cleaned up and you got maybe, let's say it's a 15-point game and you got 3 models,
right,
3-on-3 on this big old 4x4 board, and there's 3 guys in the middle fighting each other, and the guy's got his iPhone out, I don't know. I'm not that as excited. I come in there. I'm like, what the hell is that? What's that guy doing over there?
I kind of like it, but I see what you're saying also, and I think it's going to be interesting to see if it stays as a support tool. I think it's okay, but you're right. I think there is a gamer-y wantness to have all these things out there, So,
yeah.
But then again, we used to function okay with our army builder list all stapled together on the side of the table with the 40K. So I guess if you think of it like it could be an e-reader for your army list, I guess that is okay, right? But you don't want it to replace the visceral feel of dice and counters and everything. So, and I think that's what XLS did too far, right? If even if it got as cool as somehow your phone could analyze your models, and if you imagine those virtual reality apps where you hold it up and it shows your real street and then it shows like a ghost in the street you're supposed to capture. Well, imagine an app like that in your phone where you hovered over your model and it glowed and showed you its stats and hit points remaining and everything. As cool as that might be, I think it would take away from the game.
Yeah,
because you wouldn't. I think we like the markers and stuff. So I think there's a line we don't want to cross, and I think XLS definitely crossed the line.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, how about this? So here's two more examples. So does everybody remember AT-43?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
AT-43 failure. Okay. Now, and the AT-43 artwork and everything by the gentleman Paolo, I think was the guy who did all the artwork for that. He also at the same time was doing all this artwork for this universe called Dust, right?
Dust.
Which Fantasy Flight has a couple games out in the Dust universe. They have the Dust board game, which is based sort of like Risk, but in the Dust setting, which is a alternate history World War II setting, where it's kind of like Tannhauser. You have this idea of there's walkers and there's zombies, and then there's also laser guns, but it's still World War II. It's sort of one of those alternate things. So you got that, and then now though there's also a Dust tactics game they sell, which has got fantastic models, tank kit quality level models and miniatures, come pre-primed and assembled and everything. But it's on a sort of a grid based board game that some people like and some people don't care for. But now they come out with Dust Warfare, which is a miniature war game based on that. But then you had AT-43, which failed. So what do we think about these two? I know Craig and I never... Well, let's talk about AT-43 for a second. Did Romeo or Craig? I know Craig and I didn't really get started with AT-43. We tried it. I know I tried a demo.
No, I think we both tried the same demo.
What did you, Romeo? Did you ever try AT-43, or was it a non-starter with you from the beginning, or how did that work?
No, I tried it, and can I give AT-43 a huge credit for something?
Okay, go for it.
They made amazing Connex boxes that I use for my Infinity Army, and they also did an amazing job with walkers, which you use for objectives in Infinity. So. Rackham, God bless your soul, and AT-43, you did one great thing. You went away because you had guerrillas flying airplanes, and you left us Connex boxes, which I love to this day. So, yay for you! 2 thumbs up for me on AT-43.
So you didn't like the guerrillas flying airplanes? That was actually my favorite faction in AT-43.
Wow,
that was the only faction that actually appealed to me.
Completely idiotic and stupid in every way.
Wow. I like guerrillas, but
I'm also not a fan of Planet of the Apes.
Well, there you go.
I mean. I like Marky Mark, and he was part of the Funky Bunch, so you can't go wrong there. And so I like that one.
All right.
I also like the newest one, but I think he totally gave away the talking too early because he yelled no when they were in the cage, and he should have said anything. He should have tried to speak. You see where I'm going with this? He should try to speak, but not got the words out. It should have been like, ow. People are like, did he say no? But you can't tell, right? Because then when he talks at the end, when he's yelling the guy's face, then you're like, holy crap, the guy talks.
Right.
And that's way better. So what's the moral of the story? Don't put apes in planes. It's dumb. Okay? See how I got there? I got the roundabout way.
That was
nice.
I got to admire the So, Craig, why did AT-43 not take off for you? Pardon the pun with guerrillas.
I don't even remember.
I know mine. It was the full.
Yeah, you tell me because we had the same problem with it, but I don't remember what the problem was. So I'm probably not going. I know people did like it. I know we've had people throughout the entire podcast email us and say we have to try it, and we kept saying we would try it, but I mean it's just not easy to try because nobody even has it around here.
Well, I did demo when it first came out. I got kind of excited.
We demoed it when it first came out, and then we didn't try it. So remind me why we didn't try it.
Well, they had a really bad launch. Their first box set had all kinds of issues. with the rules. They committed a faux pas, which is French for bad rule set. And I think really the problem I had with it was the rules from the beginning. If you remember the tables, they had little smiley faces in them, the success failure tables. It looked kind of like a little smiling monkey or something. I wasn't really sure what the smiling face was supposed to be, but I couldn't get past that. First of all, I could never get past the smiley faces in the tables, and then just the whole rule set I didn't like. The starter set was designed to play on a mat, but then later with grids, and then later they went out to inches. So it's sort of like you could play it with, if I remember correctly, sort of like Dust Tactics is now, except Dust Tactics and Dust Warfare are two totally different rule sets. And I never, some of the models I actually liked the gorillas, believe it or not, but some of the models I didn't like one of the factions in the box that didn't appeal to me. But really, it came right down to the fact that the rules, and I know I'm going to get hate mail because I know people out there really like confrontation, but the rules were fiddly for me and reminded me of the fiddliness of confrontation too much. And I was like, this is just too fiddly. And so I gave up on it. Now, in contrast, if we look at Dust and Dust Warfare now, which has same, level of quality models, even if you didn't like the gorillas and airplanes, they looked cool. I mean, in fact, the modeling quality, I think, was there. So you have these really high-quality models again. And 1843, didn't they come pre-painted also? Wasn't that the deal, too, which is so interesting. So you have Dust, which was going to be pre-painted, but then FFG pulled back and said, no, you got the super expensive pre-painted one, but we're going to go with just pre-primed and pre-assembled, which is probably smart because now they're pretty affordable. So you have that. You have a rule book now, and here's the interesting thing about this rule book. Not to fully review it here, but just it's kind of written by some dream team folks. You got Andy Chambers is involved, Alessio Cavatore is involved, Corey Knizia is involved. A lot of people, that you might have heard of are involved with this rule set, and it's really an interesting rule set. It's very solid, and it has a lot of the mechanics I like to see in Army scale games. So that to me is much more interesting. When I looked at the mechanics of Dust Warfare, I was like, this is something. We demoed it last year at Gen Con. Ross Watson, who's also involved in the book, demoed the game for us, and we're like, wow, this is something I could get into. I know, Craig, how did you feel when you first demoed it?
I thought it was very neat. I wasn't in the market for a mini game, and I was kind of still in the World War II is not really for me mindset, but I liked the elements to it, and I recognized some of the things that you loved from Starship Troopers. And I thought the reaction phase, the reaction element was neat, and the command element was neat. So I thought it had a lot of really neat elements to it. And I thought, well, we'll check it out when it comes out. But I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait for this to come out.
Yeah, I wasn't until I read the rulebook. But I think so. I guess what I'm saying is, when I first saw AT-43, I was turned off almost immediately by it. For some reason, with Dust Warfare, I'm not. I think the art and the art style and the miniature style is awesome. But also, I think the rule set is really, really interesting too. So I don't know. It feels more. It's a more mature rule set. It's by written people with a lot more experience writing these kind of rules, and you really think it shows. And so I know Dust Warfare could be gone in a year too. I don't know. No one knows for sure, but I just feel like I feel much more confident about Dust Warfare than I ever did about AT-43.
I got a question for you, because this is kind of I'm curious because I've seen Dust and we've done some work for people that play Dust. We've done trays and things. Obviously we've released a few on our website, but the thing about it is I've always kind of been curious with any World War II genre game, and if Flames of War has the same problem, where do you go? You can't release a new faction unless you really spiral your universe out of control and really kind of bring back the soap opera star that died, and he didn't die down the elevator shaft. He fell on the mat, and he's been in a coma in Hawaii for 3 years. It's like, what do you do when you've done the Germans, you've done the Russians, you've even brought in the Japanese, you've done the Americans, they all have jump packs, they all have walkers. Where now? Because there's going to be one guy out there who's like, none of those factions really relate to me.
Well, that's a good point, because I think one of the big things I've said before on the show is that I have the rule of 4 factions for any war game. And my theory's always been, I learned this lesson with Starship Troopers, which only ever had 2 factions, and they tried to come out with a 3rd faction that was a fail. And that is that if you don't have 4, anything less than that's going to feel like you're missing something. And if you look at the launch pattern for most successful miniature war games, like War Machine had 4 when it started, right? I think 4 is the magic. As soon as you have 4, 3 feels like you're missing something, 2 feels like you don't have any choice, and 4 feels like, now you got something going on here. So right now, Dust Warfare's biggest weakness is it's two factions. It's they call them the Allies and the Axis, but it's really the Germans and the Americans. Right. But they the Russian, the Soviet stuff is all done. There's pictures of it everywhere, and it'll be launching, I'm sure, in a couple months. What's interesting about that is they went totally with air power for them. So they've got a lot of helicopters and stuff, and they're much more mobile. So they're the first air power. Then there's some hints of the Japanese coming next. So you can see inside a year or two, they're going to have 4 factions that'll be America, Germany, Russia, and Japanese, which is a pretty good. That'll get you to where War Machine started 10 years ago, right? So and they made it. So I think there's enough to start with there. From there, I think they could start doing what Flames of War does. Flames of War brings in the Maori. You can bring in different smaller factions. There's some interesting fluff in Dust Warfare about, the Brazilians have their own thing. Also, what they do, sort of take a page from 40K this way, is that you get the sub-factions, right? So depending on which special characters you pick, for example, the Germans have zombies. They've got zombies going on. There's actually a zombie special character. If you choose him, now you can have an entire platoon of just zombies, right? So you could make a whole zombie army almost like just a Space Wolf army as opposed to generic Space Marines. So they're going to have that specialization, I'm sure, eventually, assuming the game does well. So I think they've got some room there. They could do the theater trick that Flames of War did, right, where you can play Germans, but are you playing the African Germans under Rommel? Or are you playing the Russian theater Germans? So you have these different choices, and I think if they're careful about it, they've got a lot of room to move before they run onto that. But I think it's imperative they get those Russians out as soon as possible, and they get the Japanese previewed up on the site soon. If they don't make that move, I think they're going to run into the problem where people feel like there's only 2 choices and they don't like either of them.
Right, and then people lose interest, and the game's already dying before it's growing.
Well, the good news is when they publish the book already, the Russians are coming out. Supposedly, I would be shocked if they're not at Gen Con if not sooner. So they're inside of 6 months of the new core rulebook coming out. So I think they're okay there. And if they can do the same thing with the Japanese by next Gen Con, I think they're in a pretty strong spot. Assuming they get the sales to make it happen, which is a big if, right?
Right.
So there you go. So that's we have time for one more pairing here. Craig, what do you think? What should we talk about next? What do you want to do?
What should we?
Which one looks really exciting to you? We got a whole list of games here. Ooh, we should talk about Mantic.
Yeah, let's talk about Mantic because that's been lately. That's come up a couple times locally.
Romeo, you've got a deal with Mantic, right?
Right, we have a partnership.
All right, so they're cool. So let me ask you this: how is Mantic playing in your local group? I mean, I love the models, and I see that they're selling models like crazy as GW stand-in models, which is fine.
Right.
But in terms of what is it, Kings of War and Warpath? Are those games getting any traction for you locally, or what's the scoop?
Got it. I mean, I'm going to be totally honest here because I wouldn't want to lie to the listeners, right? We only lie on 40K radio. We don't want to hear it. So.
Wow.
No, I don't awkward. But people pay for 40K radio, so they totally get ripped off. So it's great.
You heard it here first.
I would say honestly, that at least in our store, no one's played it at all.
Okay.
We just have had a very tough time with the line. And again, this is not knocking on Mantic and their group. Ronnie's a very good friend of mine. He's a very part of that. There's another owner to the company who is a huge avid gamer and fan of miniatures and cares about the community. Their team is excellent to work with and work for. So it's nothing on them, right? They are putting in their hard work where it needs to be put. I just think they're such a new company that they're making some mistakes, and it's not my place to tell the world what those mistakes are. People can figure it out on their own. I can tell you, though, that is the reason why I think the game is being held back and not growing as it should be. I also feel that the more unique they make themselves and step away from putting it almost feels sometimes when I look at Mantic's releases as it's a vindictive company trying to get back at GW, whereas they are strong enough and good enough guys, and they're talented enough to where if they just walked out on their own and just went completely away from GW anything, and there was no resemblance to any of the GW line, they would succeed faster. I'm not saying they're not going to succeed in what they're doing, but they would succeed much faster because people then wouldn't feel like these were stand-ins, like you just pointed out. They would feel like these were an additional cool thing to get into. So overall, my opinion is they really should just start branching out completely on their own, use their ingenuity and their money and their power that they have to grow their own game and step away and build their own name instead of trying to fill in gaps where GW may be making mistakes.
Yeah. I don't know, Craig, what do you think? I feel the same way. I feel like I look at Mantic stuff, and it's almost like the factions they release and the order they release them are specific holes in the GW line.
Yeah, I have felt that way since the very beginning. Back when they really just did a couple fantasy line, they had dwarves and they had what did they have? They added undead, yeah. Right. And it was. I mean, it was all but totally open that these were GW stand-in models, and look how cheap they are. They're $1 a model or whatever. And to be honest, I mean, they look it to me. They look like GW models circa late '90s, maybe. I mean, they're not like the really nice, crisp plastic models that you're seeing from the top of the line nowadays, or they haven't been. I mean, they may have upgraded since then, but. When they announced the sci-fi, the Warpath game, I was very excited. I've been looking for a new game, and let's see how quickly I jumped in with Dust Warfare. But when they announced what that was, orcs versus what's the other faction? It's
squats. Space squats.
It's the squats.
Yeah, not squats. The
orcs versus not squats.
Space dwarves.
Exactly. And I was like, seriously, because that's literally you're just admitting that you're not even going to try to do your own thing,
right.
which I mean didn't bother me. They don't owe me anything, but it meant I wasn't interested at all in getting into their game because I mean that game already exists. It's 40K, and I made my squad army, and and then I moved on. So I agree 100% with what Romeo says, that it feels like it's a huge wasted opportunity for the gaming community at large, because you don't get a lot of, army scale, really cool games that hit, and everybody gets excited about it. You don't get that happening very often. So when it happens and it just feels like it's like, look, we're going to thumb our nose at GW and we're going to do this. They're not orcs and they're not squats.
Right.
Now we have not Space Skaven, which if you look at the models, the way they're painted are not 1999 orcs. I mean, it's like they're paint. Yeah, I don't know, but I was very disappointed. And I mean, I think a lot of that has to be there. And I think I've said this before on the show. Their business plan must be built around selling proxy models. So there's a certain amount of versatility that they don't have in any new endeavor that they launch. They can say like, well, we're going to do Warpath, but if we stick with models that can also be used in 40K, we know we're kind of milking two streams at the same time. Whereas if we do our own thing and these really cool aliens that have never existed anywhere before, then we're kind of on our own and we're standing or falling on our own merits. And it's a lot more dangerous position, I think, for a business to be in.
One of the things that disappointed me too, Mantic effort that I was really excited about, that I was sad about, was Dwarfs King's Hold, because here you had a cool dungeon crawler type thing, and I do like their miniatures, but when it came out, the production quality was just, I thought, a little low for what I was looking for. The box was just really thin, the tiles were really thin, and if you look at a game like Super Dungeon Explorer, where that's again from another reasonably small miniature company, that game's production values were through the roof, Yeah. And again, this was and if you look at Dwarfs King's Hold, here you have a company who's already making their money on the stand-in models. They're just repurposing their stand-in models. It would have been nice to see a little more effort into the accessories in the box. You know what I mean? Like, so again, I think it comes back to they need to focus on what they're trying to do with some of this stuff. And I also think, Craig and I, you just talking about this recently. Prior to this recent. We're standing now on the rain-soaked precipice of another large-scale army miniature war game investment here with Dust Warfare, and we're basically getting ready to jump in with both feet. And yet, 2 episodes ago, if you'd asked either of us, we would have both said, and I think you actually did say this in 100, like, look, we're not doing army-scale games anymore. It's too many freaking models.
I did say
these, and I'm saying the same thing. Skirmish games are where it's at. That's why I play War Machine. That's why I play Malifaux. It's just too many models. So when Manta came out, that was sort of my thinking. It's too many models. I'm not there anymore. But here you got Dust, and I'm like, I really do want to play a large-scale army game, and it's hitting all the buttons. So, and I then started asking myself, what did Mantic miss? And I think, again, it was like, well, if I'm going to go to Mantic, I might as well just go to GW.
Right.
I mean, yeah, Mantic's a little more affordable, But if I'm going to go there, I might as well go all the way, right? And get and their rules are interesting because they're shorter and they're a little more concise. But there's nothing like knock your socks off innovative in there. There's nothing like really different in there like you might find in like a Malifaux or something, which is totally crazy. So you're really looking at sort of GW light rule set, with much less faction choice than GW has. So why would you go there unless you're really just replacing GW models? You know what I mean? Like they need a bigger range, I think.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think that's true.
Anything we missed on that, Romeo, or is that pretty much your analysis of Mantic also?
No, I'm with you guys. I mean, I think you guys touched on a lot of good points, and you got me interested in Dust. You know what I mean? So you definitely stole that one.
We're going to talk about
how many free copies they send you guys.
None. That's the thing.
We don't get it free anything anymore.
Dear Fantasy Flight Games, please send us free copies of Dust.
We'll pimp whatever you send us.
Romeo,
seriously.
this is going to be my path at Adepticon this week. By the way, it'll be going over to the Battlefoam booth first because I swear you guys sell out of all the foam I need in the first 10 minutes. So I got to go right there. Then,
dude, you do seriously. Hey, come earlier if you can, because that way we can give it to you. We didn't bring a lot of. Well, yeah, we did. What am I talking about?
You do, but it'll be gone. Then I got to go to the Fantasy Flight booth and buy all the Dust crap because it'll be gone as soon as people read the Dust Warfare book. I'm like, because the thing was, this was the big mistake Criag I made because they were selling. Stores couldn't. Dust Tactics was not doing well. And
locally, it had completely died.
I think most game stores, you could probably get Dust Tactics models, and they're the same models. You could probably get Dust Tactics models really cheap right now because no one's realizing, or very few people know about the Dust Warfare rule set and how, I think, personally, pretty darn good it is. So before that wave hits and they all sell out of all the old core sets, there were $100, you get amazing models, you better grab those babies. So basically, I'm going to be going in there and trying to score that kind of crap from Fantasy Flight after I hit your booth and get into foam, take all the stuff home. Basically, the plan.
I love it. Hey, I got a question for you guys. So are the Dust Tactics, because I have the board game, right?
Okay,
so I bought it,
right?
Yeah, of course. And are the models, like, for instance, take the guy that has a radio on his back, right?
Yeah, right.
Like a little antenna.
Yeah.
Is the models are still one-piece models, right? Like they're assembled. Right?
They come. You buy them. You're buying the Dust. In fact, there's no Dust Warfare models. The Dust Warfare book says uses Dust Tactics models, and you buy the Dust Tactics models.
Okay. So it's the same models. Now, is the plastic on the new stuff? Because I have the board game from first edition of it, right? Yeah. So was that 2 Gen Cons ago, right?
Yeah.
Right. Is it still like when you push on the guy's antenna, it's kind of like rubbery in a way?
That's the one thing I don't like.
Yeah,
the quality of the plastic is still more board game plastic than what you would call mini game plastic.
But they're all pinned at their waist, so they can actually rotate.
Right, which is a cool feature that does not in any way address the fact that their guns sag a little.
No, the guns are droopy. You might have to do the hot water, but they are.
What to say about guys with droopy guns? Okay,
they get the ladies.
They do not get the prom queen. Okay, all right. They get the girl that plays the tuba.
It's not if your gun's droopy. It's just making sure it droops. It just can't be droopy at the wrong time. That's all we're saying. So Craig, why did you bring us to this location?
I don't know. Sorry.
But I do have to say the detail of the models is fantastic, and the fact there's very few mold lines, and the fact they're pre-assembled and pre-primed, really, because if you think about it, when you get into a new game, there's a big chunk of time you spend, even if you're a painter and got to paint everything, there's a big chunk of time you do just assembling, filing, and priming. That's a huge chunk of time. So having that all removed from you and still being at the same price point, if not a little lower than the competition, that's pretty exciting. And the vehicle quality is off the charts. I'd say it's with GW. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really pretty good.
I love their walkers. I mean, that's the funny thing. That's why I asked, because I always remember that like I said, I use them now.
Right.
Even some of their walkers, I use them now for Infinity as different objectives, and we have like this whole military base thing that we fight. Anyway, so the point is that we use them that way, and we use them because we like the walkers because of that plastic they have. It's almost like when you click the weapons into their little holes, they're like friction fit, so it's like hard to get them in there, and the plastic's real hard and cool, and everything fits, and if you go, I glued all mine down, like all the parts and pieces, because I didn't want them wobbling around, because they kind of wobble a little bit, what I'm talking about? So I just plastic glued everything in place. Now it's solid, and I like that. I like that feel. I like that plastic. I like the quality. It feels very quality. It feels like a very high-end model that you buy for like a kit car or a toy airplane or something, right?
Yeah, right.
But then I look at the little guys, and they are soft rubbery. And I haven't painted any of them, so I don't know. I'm totally speaking completely from my previous painting of other models that are rubbery like that. That if you move that antenna around after you've sprayed it, doesn't it crack the paint?
Oh, but you don't have to spray it because it's already.
Primed.
It's not even just primed; it's base coated.
Right.
Okay. So then you're just doing maybe highlights, washes,
exactly.
Just like pick up the fresh little dry brush, a little wash, and you're done. Yeah, it actually paints really fast.
Romeo, literally, the core set comes with it for each faction 2 medium walkers and 16 guys, and I painted all of that in 2 days.
Yeah, but you're not a very good painter.
That's true, and I'm not very fast either.
So that's the thing that you can crank them out, and I think that's another thing that's appealing.
The vehicles crank out like nothing. I mean,
that's
crazy.
That's really appealing to me too. I'm not going to lie. That's a big fact. That's a big factor in the hey, maybe this is an army scale game I can actually get painted into the table. And that's and yet I'm still not paying premium prices for the models. I think that's also the key because even if you buy the models individual, in packs, a squad of 5 guys is $15.
Yeah,
that's not cheap, but that's not expensive either, right? And again, they're pre-primed and pre-assembled, so that's a pretty good deal.
And they're pinned. That is pretty damn cool that they're pinned
and
at the waist so they can pivot and look cool.
And they're not sloppily assembled. I mean, that's what I mean. The vehicles also, the little parts like little armor bits can rotate, and the turrets rotate, and the guns elevate, and it's really, I mean, again, the game has all the elements it needs. I think it has good-looking models. It has good. I think personally, very solid rules. Some unique rules in there, the way they do command phase and stuff. Its biggest weakness right now is faction count. I think that's a huge, glaring hole that hopefully they're going to repair. And I really cross my fingers that sales are strong enough early on that Fantasy Flight sticks with it and gets at least the 4th faction out. I think if they can get the 4th faction out there, it'll take off. That's my gut feeling, but we'll see. So there we have it. The guy behind the counter here at Dunkin' Donuts is sort of giving us the why are you still here? Yeah. Do you want one last crawler, Romeo, before we go here? I'm gonna get you crawler.
Yeah, one more crawler and a coffee to keep me going.
Good. So Romeo, I need your advice though. I'm going to be seeing you there in Chicago in about 2 days here. Where we going to go get some pizza? You going to get me real deep dish Chicago pizza?
Yeah, you asked me that question. That's really, it's a funny thing. The best probably pizza and food in general is again at my mom's house, who lives in Palatine. This woman cooks up a storm anytime I come home because, I grew up here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And my folks have lived here for years now, from 12, 15 years, whatever it is. So when I come home, I don't even get to enjoy the streets of Chicago and all their goodness.
You got Mom.
Food.
Well, does she deliver? Does she deliver?
She might have
Can I call
to,
her?
right?
Can we call her?
What she has to do at this point?
Can she bring in maybe one of her homemade pies to the con?
Wouldn't that be awesome? When are we playing Dust? What day is that?
Are we
doing that?
We have to.
I got this really great Dust foam. I just picked it up the other day from Myriad Games, which carries Battlefoam. Yeah, and I've got it all in my pack 720 there, or Craig's pack.
Actually, went in my pack 720.
I stole his pack 720, and so we're bringing that all down. So we're coming down with 2 full Dust armies, and we're going to play some Dust this weekend, definitely.
Okay, well, if you give me a day's heads up on that, I'll have my mom bring a pie.
Ooh, done.
How about that?
Ooh, that is
Would that be awesome?
Sold, dude. That is totally sold.
Dust tactics and pies. That'd be sick. Okay, and then you guys can totally blow her up on here and tell everybody how great or how bad it was, one or the other.
It'll be awesome. How can it be bad? First of all, it's your mom. It's going to be fantastic. All right, cool. I'm holding you to that, Romeo.
Absolutely. No, I'm telling you, I'm going to make it happen. She cooks up a storm. She'll be down for a challenge.
I'm emailing. Craig and I are going to talk after this. We're going to figure out exactly when we're going to do this because I'm getting pizza.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, Romeo, thank you so much for joining us in the Lost Chapters, and we'll look forward to having you on the full 3C treatment in the next episode of the D6 Generation.
Very cool.
Love it, dude.
Awesome.
You guys soon.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.